my point and my view on TB Joshua issue is, let's say it's true. He's a human being, all right? We all human beings.
There is no one without sin, but I love the man of God, and the man of God was used by God, and anyone who says otherwise, you don't know Jesus.
Greetings, y'all, and welcome to Seek Things Above TV. I'm your host, Lou Ciccone. So today we're going to be talking about the recent documentary, Disciples, the Cult of TB Joshua. This is a 3-part docuseries that was done by the BBC after a 2-year investigation into the former so-called man of God's church. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do, if you like content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, sharing the video, ringing the bell for notifications, as it lets the YouTube algorithm know that you like content like this. But without further ado, let's hop right into this, y'all. So this documentary has been very eye-opening, very provocative. This is some of the promotional artwork right here for it. And I will leave the link in the description for this article here if you'd like to check it out for yourselves. But basically, if you haven't seen the documentary, it is a 3-part docuseries that details the harrowing events that took place under the ministry of the so-called ministry of TB Joshua. And it's a church that was located in Nigeria, in Lagos, in Nigeria, the Synagogue Church of All Nations. And the documentary is extremely heartbreaking, to say the least. Okay, so it's very heartbreaking. It talks about how he basically imprisoned people under the guise of them being disciples for him, and with brainwashing, sleep deprivation, and just absolute control of their lives, which resulted in even physical and sexual abuse, and how he just took advantage of these people. All right. These ladies, I should say, in this documentary. It is definitely worth watching to be informed about. I will say it is a difficult watch, something that you cannot, view with small children around. So do be aware of that. Viewer discretion is greatly advised when you watch this documentary. Very saddening events that took place, very heartbreaking, very, just frustrating, and things that would make you angry when you see it as well. This is a shot of one of the ladies from the documentary, and I applaud these women for their bravery and stepping forward and telling their stories, these heartbreaking events that took place to them. And so definitely pray for the victims of this charlatan, this false prophet. And, the sad thing is, justice, ultimately, the justice that they seek will not be found. But at least the documentary does let people know who this man was and what that ministry is all about. Now, what has transpired since this documentary dropped is that certain people have taken to their social media platforms and have decided to campaign for the late prophet and to basically talk about how this dude was a great man of God, and anybody who perceives these allegations to be true is basically somebody who lacks, they're trying to couch it as though we're people who lack discernment. We're not able to perceive the real things that are going on, and as though there's just some massive conspiracy happening, and that anybody who's bought into the facts of the documentary is somebody who is misguided and can't see the truth. Let's call them what they are. The wolves in sheep's clothing that we are looking at today are none other than Passion Java. Okay, so we're going to start with Passion Java, take a look at some of his stuff, and then we're going to look at the statement that so-called prophet Lovy Elias made, and you'll see how similar these whatever they are, testimonies or comments or statements are. You're going to see how similar they are, and how these dudes are cut from the same cloth. And thus why this video was titled, TB Joshua, the Army of Darkness, because we're seeing basically these guys acting as though They are, carrying on the legacy of this prophet, backing him up, saying he's a great man of God, and trying to act as though his ministry was one of light when in fact it was one of darkness. So for those who are not acquainted with this Passion Java to start with, let's just go ahead and give you like a little idea of who you're dealing with. These visuals should aid in giving you an idea of what kind of man we're talking about here. So this is Prophet Java, Passion Java, a man who buys expensive cars, throws money around, makes it a point to boast about how much money he has in his videos. He lives a very opulent lifestyle, and he also has his wife who's in ministry with him, Lily Java. And she is cut from the same cloth. It's a birds of a feather situation, making sure that you see the watch as he's flashing it there in this video. This is how this guy is. Then you have this video right here. This is him giving his wife a birthday gift. And the gift is basically throwing money at her and making sure the whole world sees all this money that he's giving to her. Talks about, hey, go get your nails done, go do this, go do that. And this is Passion Java in a nutshell. You're not too far from understanding who he is just by watching these two clips right here. And, this will give you a picture of who you're dealing with. Okay. Now, if you want to see something about this guy, Lovy Elias, if you've never heard of him, I'll just give you all just a screenshot of him from his IG page. But this is the dude that we're talking about here. If you've never heard of him, he is a so-called prophet. I believe he's in the Atlanta area. I may be mistaken on that, but he is in the United States, has a ministry here, and it is a rather large one and influences people. Sometimes it's odd because you'll see dudes that were like black actors. I've seen a number of black actors who have been in movies and they go to this guy's church. You know what I mean? So he attracts high profile people. He attracts different people from different walks of life. And it is under the guise of a prophetic ministry that reveals the truth of God. And, there's healing, there's all kinds of stuff. But at the end of it, it is just a prosperity gospel on drugs church that seeks to rob people and fleece them of their money under the guise of working for God. That's really what's happening here. So that's a brief introduction of the guys we're dealing with. Now, let's get into the statement that Prophet Passion Java made, and we're going to kind of compare the two, and we'll just talk through the points that they're making as they made their defense of this so-called prophet TB Joshua.
This is the great prophet Passion Java. As I'm heading out of my house, I just thought it's best time for me to talk about the BBC documentary about the great prophet, the senior prophet TB Joshua. I've never spoke about TB Joshua before, but I come to you to talk about him today because BBC is not addressing TB Joshua, mainly because what are they going to benefit by attacking a dead man?
So right from the beginning, we see the arrogance on display. You see the need for this video to be shot in front of his Maybach and with the house in the background. I mean, the car is literally on the grass. So you have to not put your car on the driveway, put it on the grass just to get this shot. And that's how much work this guy, the levels, of work that are put into making him have a certain image. Okay. So, and he calls TB Joshua the great prophet. He calls himself the great prophet in this. And you're going to get this first point here that there's this idea that there is a conspiracy going on. There's a conspiracy going on, and the BBC is part of it because they are talking about a dead man. So hold on to that thought and see how Lovy also makes this same point, and we're going to talk about it as well.
Now, the number one thing that you have to realize is this. The world thrives off negativity. Negative things sell more than anything that is positive. That is the first thing. Now, you need to ask yourself, what is the motive of making a video or making a documentary about a man who can't defend himself? That is the first red flag. Anyone that has any kind of wisdom, the primary thing is always to make sure you don't go with one side of the story. Now, when the man was alive, I remember this. When the man was alive, there were people who were paid to frame him on stories. If they've paid people to frame me, create stories about me, and I'm nowhere lifted as this man was in his day, God is taking me somewhere. I haven't arrived there yet. But if they could pay people to create stories about me, if they could do things to frame me, how much more for a man who took over Africa for Christ, took over the world for Christ?
So again, we see this insinuating that there is something behind the fact that these guys have released this documentary now, and forgetting the point that this documentary was actually began, the testimonies were received before he died. And mysteriously enough, it says that he died 2 days after the first people gave their interviews to the BBC. So he died after interviews had already began. Okay, that's the first point. And then to say we need to think why they're doing this now, it's the same point that Passion Java is trying to make, as though there's something else going on, when in fact the work on this documentary began before he died. So it's not uncharacteristic, and it doesn't, that in and of itself doesn't indicate some sort of nefarious or some sort of insidious motive that the BBC had in doing this documentary. It's just nonsense. Again, it's putting these things out in the air and making it seem as though there is something happening behind the scenes, and it is a direct attack not only on TB Joshua and his ministry, but it's actually an attack on the church. Baloney.
What are they going to achieve by attacking someone who is dead? This is what I prophesied some time ago. Satanists are plotting to launch 666, but they cannot launch 666 unless they destroy the church. So when they come and they start publishing stuff about TD Jakes, about TB Joshua, just last day I was in the documentary of You Song, and this church was affecting and attacking most powerful ministries around the world. It's not because they want to attack the prophet person or TB Joshua or TD Jakes. Prophet Angel was in Al Jazeera just last year. Why are they attacking these great men of God? It's simply because the devil wants the church people to look at men of God as nobodies, as the most evil people.
He's claiming that these attacks are being made because people want, like these institutions or the BBC and other people want us, Christians, to look at great men of God as though they are evil. It is so convenient that he would throw himself in the midst of these people who are being victimized when he talks about himself appearing in a Hillsong documentary. And he mentions people who have allegations made against them, including TD Jakes, and somehow all these allegations being made against so-called men of God are false allegations, and they are designed to take down the church's belief in its leaders. And somehow this is a scheme of the devil to weaken the church and cause us to lose hope or lose faith in these guys. Well, I got to tell you, Mr. Passion Java, that we never had any faith in you or hope in you to begin with. All right. Those people who, by God's grace, have been led to the truth of his word. OK, So not in any sense of having any form of superiority or anything like that, but simply by the grace of God have been led to the truth. People who are in this category, we never ever looked at you as somebody who we needed to have faith in, and then somehow we lost faith in you, and it's a sad thing, okay? Or somehow people lost faith in TB Joshua. TB Joshua was never in that category of a great man of God who people lost faith in either. He is somebody who, for a while now, was already seen as a heretic. So before even these allegations came out, his teaching was being questioned. His teaching, the things that he taught, were just not in line with the Bible. They were simply not in line with the Bible. Even if you look at his sermons, there's very little exegesis happening, if any at all. Okay? It is, referencing the Bible and making points, eisegesis, and then making proclamations, and then the rest of it is fake miracles taking place. That is what one of his services looked like. And people would go hysterical, go crazy over it. And we'll talk about some of the reasons of that as well. But essentially, that's what these services looked like. Okay, that's what these services look like. These guys, everybody he's mentioned over here as great men of God, none of them are people who we would consider great men of God. All right. Anybody with any level of discernment by God's grace would not consider these people great men of God.
To look at men of God as nobodies, as the most evil people, so that when you decline a man of God and they release, it's just going to be one chip, which they'll put on your forehead or your hand. They'll say, just as you are doing Apple Pay, your passport to travel, you need this chip. To pay, you need this. To do business, you need this. And the church is the only opposition to 666. That's why they are doing this. My point and my view on TB Joshua issue is...
So before he continues, you see that there is this strange, ridiculous theory that he's throwing around, and it is about basically the mark of the beast, which he calls 666, as the mark of the beast being described in Revelation. So he's calling it 666 in here, and he is saying that this is going to be a chip similar to Apple Pay or whatever it is, and you need this to travel, and so on and so forth. Now, whether you believe in that or not, whether you believe that it's going to be something like that or not, that has nothing to do with what's going on here. That actually has nothing to do with what's going on here. What we're seeing here in this documentary and in the accounts given by all these people is we're seeing the things that this so-called TB Joshua did, this so-called prophet did, and we're seeing what's really under the hood of this ministry. And because of that, I believe that we're also getting some insight into what is under the hood of some of these other ministries, which were, basically similar to his ministry. And that's what's really happening here. So we're getting a look under the hood. And whether it's not the same level of sexual immorality, there are similarities in those ministries to this guy's ministry, the TB Joshua's ministry, because Passion Java himself has been accused several times of dabbling in witchcraft and basically bringing that into his ministry in order to do the things that he does, even in order to attain the success that he has achieved, the financial success that he's achieved. So you see that there are similarities and there are things going on that are they're very comparable. We look at it and we can say, this is the same playbook. Okay, it's the same playbook. So as we see this playbook be demystified, we're getting a chance to see what's really going on in these fake ministries. And it is not a conspiracy. This has nothing to do with, the mark of the beast or anything. There's no conspiracy going on. There's only truth being revealed. And that's what's really happening right here.
My point and my view on TB Joshua issue is, let's say it's true. He's a human being, all right? We all human beings. The church is God using human beings. It's not God using gods. No, we are human beings. We can make mistakes. We can have errors. We may do things because of flesh. But whether he did it, which I believe he did not do it, it's simply an attack to the body of Christ.
Now, understand this primarily. There is no one without sin. Everyone has messed up. Now, me making this video, by no means am I saying that the man of God never had mistakes. I don't know him personally, but I love the man of God. And the man of God was used by God. And anyone who says otherwise is just, you don't know Jesus if you think the man was used demonically or satanically. If you truly read scripture, you will know who this man was. Now, that doesn't mean that he didn't have mistakes. Now, do I know his mistakes? I don't know. I didn't live with him. But everybody has mistakes. The only one that is perfect is the King of Glory, the Lord Jesus.
So this is where Lovy also minimizes the sin that TB Joshua committed. And nobody's perfect, right? He uses that same argument right here, or that same point, and goes on to say that anybody who does not think that TB Joshua was a man of God does not know Jesus. He actually said that if you don't think TB Joshua was a man of God, you do not know Jesus. That is perhaps the most despicable part of this entire video, where these guys are going to minimize the sin that this man is alleged of committing, right? They're going to minimize it and just call it a mistake. Call it a mistake, and to emphasize basically that no human being is morally perfect and God uses imperfect people, and that's what the church is. That is so shameful, and these guys ought to honestly just be, I don't even understand. Like, I don't understand how you could stare into a camera, watch everything that is seen on this documentary, and come out and use the term mistakes and minimize the sin that this man is alleged of committing. And then not only that, but then to say that, hey, even if it is true, yo, like, you know, the dude is only human. We're only human. Like basically like saying, hey, you know, like God knows we're only human. So, you know, this is how it goes. It's completely deplorable that these guys would use that kind of excuse, would even dare to use that kind of argument when dealing with this kind of stuff, when dealing with people's lives who've been ruined. And you're just messing around with all that stuff and minimizing it and just calling it a mistake, calling horrendous acts, atrocious acts, barbaric things, calling these things simply mistakes. And so you have to understand, if these guys could say that about those things that were committed by TB Joshua, then you have to understand that when they have any kind of moral indiscretion or any kind of sin that they're, you know, taking part in their lives, they are going to be willing to sweep that under the rug as well.
How can we verify that the people on the documentary, what they are saying is completely the truth? How can that be verified? There is no evidence other than their words, right? Now, maybe he did do them wrong, maybe he didn't do them wrong, whatever the case may be. But the question is this: how can we verify that what is being said is true?
We may not have video evidence. There may not be cassettes of actual incidents that took place, but you have on one thing, you have multiple witnesses. You have multiple witnesses from different places, okay, different nationalities. You have multiple witnesses from different places, different backgrounds. The one thing that they had in common is that they were all in this sort of captive lifestyle, that they were basically imprisoned in this synagogue under the guise of being disciples. And because of that, and because they were young and impressionable, they were taken advantage of, and they have things to say. They have things to say. They have stories to tell. And the stories are of similar events happening. There's nothing for these people to gain. There's like nothing for these people to gain by making this up. And if you have multiple witnesses, then at that point we have to say these claims have a lot more weight than one person coming forth.
So I want everybody to open your eyes and understand this. Church, don't smile over this foolishness. Why would BBC leave everything happening in London to come attack a prophet who is dead from Africa? BBC is for British people. They should broadcast British stuff. They are broadcasting a prophet who is not even alive, who died years ago. Why? The devil is after you guys. So make sure you think right, you worship God, you serve God, you love God. And above everything, fear God and love Jesus. Enjoy life every day.
Making sure to end the video with a close-up that shows you the Maybach sign as he hops in the vehicle. False prophet Passion Java ends the video with a very ridiculous statement. And the statement is that all this is an attack on the church. It's an attack on the church. And why would the BBC, which is a British news organization, report on something about an African pastor? Well, how about the fact that in this instance, the BBC is actually displaying a greater sense of morality and a need to get to the bottom of things and to try to get some kind of justice than the so-called pastor, the so-called prophet. That's what's happening here.
Why are Christians celebrating something that the world doesn't believe in your Jesus? The guys who created this documentary are not believers. They don't believe in the Lord Jesus. They don't believe in church. They don't believe in salvation. They created this for clicks and for likes, right? That's why they made this whole documentary. Why are you celebrating something that the world has created? What do you think they are setting the stage for? Do you think any of you pastors are safe? How do you think the persecution of the church will come, and how do you think they are going to justify it? When they can make a documentary about a faith they don't believe in to tarnish you, do you think Muslims don't have controversies? Do you think Hindus don't have controversies? Why is it that they're only making videos about Christians? You foolish people, you can't see what they're doing. They are setting us up. And many of you pastors and evangelists are going to be foolish enough to talk about this and tarnish somebody and this and that and that and that. You are idiots. You don't get it. They are setting you up. No one is safe anymore.
So a lot of, again, just foolish statements being made by Lovy here. On one hand, he's claiming that the church is celebrating this. Nobody is celebrating in this. Nobody is celebrating in the things that happen to these people, or even that the fact that that this stuff is all over the place. Nobody's celebrating that. What we're looking at is the truth coming out and saying that it is good for wickedness to be exposed. That's what is going on right now. If anybody's saying there's something good about this, they're saying that it is good that wickedness is being exposed. And then to actually even attack Christians in here by saying that you are an idiot. You're an idiot if you buy into this, if you so-called quote unquote celebrate this, when this is actually an attack on you as a member of the church. Again, this is not this. We know that the world is not friends with the church. We know that. Nobody needs to be even told that. Okay. Now, the only thing that you could say that even has any kind of even a kernel of truth in all of this is that, yeah, these news organizations are not Christian news organizations. They're not necessarily trying to do this for the glory of God. That's not necessarily the motivation. But in their motivation and their pursuit to get down to the truth of what's going on, listen, God is the source of all truth. Anything that is true, God is the source of truth. He's the originator of truth itself. And so if lies are exposed, things that are done in the dark are exposed, that glorifies God, whether or not these people are Christians or not. And why don't you think that God in his sovereignty can use a secular news firm for his own glory? If God is completely sovereign over evil, over Satan and demons and all kinds of wickedness, if he's sovereign over all of that, then he's sovereign over even news organizations, which may not have God's glory in mind, but God can use those news organizations to bring about truth and to bring about his purposes, to fulfill his purposes. And so he can use the BBC, given all the resources that they have, to come to the truth. And that wouldn't even be out of the ordinary. That wouldn't be out of the ordinary. To paint this as a greater part of some conspiracy to attack the church, as we've seen Passion Java do, and now Lovy do the same thing, is just utter nonsense, man. It's utter nonsense. And it is a deflection. He starts to even talk about different faiths, talks about how, hey, can't you see that even Muslims or other people, they don't have this kind of smoke that we do. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, dude, that's not the conversation here. We're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about atrocities that occurred and truth being revealed about that. So much more could be said about this entire video, about what these guys are doing, about the level of just deception and trying to basically gaslight folks into making you think you're crazy if you believe these allegations. The lengths that these guys are going to do that is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But this whole video right here is to make you aware that there are disciples, there are real disciples of TB Joshua, and those disciples are these guys. The disciples are guys like Passion Java, like Lovy, like other leaders from Africa who have come out in solidarity of TB Joshua and basically are trying to make anybody who thinks there's any credibility to the claims that were made make you sound like you must be crazy and out your mind, and that you lack some sort of spiritual discernment to see what's going on beyond what the eye can see, which is just a bunch of nonsense. So don't buy into this. Look, the best thing you could do is, as I said, man, just check these documentaries out for yourself. Make up your own mind about these things, but be warned of men like these who are basically agents of darkness, parading themselves as angels of light, and they are not that. These guys are not that. These guys are dangerous. These guys are dangerous. The mere fact that they would back up this stuff, if you ever had any issue with their ministry before and you were unsure, the fact that they would back up this stuff should give you pause and make you want to run in the opposite direction if you were being led astray and being taken by these lies. But with that being said, y'all, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I would love to hear from y'all. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And if then you have been raised with Christ, Seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. All right. God bless y'all, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.